专业名家汇集，市场大势解析，投资痛点事宜，时下热点直击。欢迎收看房东网名家讲坛。
名家讲坛，真知灼见。大家好，这里是58Home 房东网名家讲坛。名家讲坛致力用专业的态度、专业的角度、专业的声音，解决村友的困惑和痛点。今天我们特别高兴地请到了 Judi Paré, Plentitude Founder and President， 跟我们一起就有关地产投资方面的一些深度的一些问题进行一番畅談。Hi, Judi.
Hi, it's nice to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
From time to time, we talk about the do things right versus do right things. And in terms of buying right properties, what's your comment in terms of the properties get a more potential value increase or even spend less on the improvement? What's the element in your mind on that?
That's a good question. When I'm looking at properties, I also look at its current use as well as its future use. So one of the things I like to do is evaluate what it can potentially be. For example, we have a single family home with a unit in it plus a fourplex on the same property. And there was a commercial component to it. But the commercial taxes cost us a lot of money. So what we decided was we're going to see what else could we do with this property. So we converted the entire thing into residential. So it gives us higher value because we're able to get higher rents, but it also decreases our costs because now we don't have that commercial component to it. Right. So the tax structure changes. So one of the things I look at when I'm picking the property is really where is it located? What else can I do with the property and how is it currently being operated? Because some of those properties that are underperforming are okay if you can do other things with them in the future. So I look at the current use and the future use and the highest best use. And that helps me develop or choose which property I'm going to pick.
Those are the two key elements that you're stressing there, right?
Yeah, okay. Exactly.
When we talk about those, that some of our real estate investors talk about the rental income, the percentage of the total house value. Does that make any indication in your mind there?
Yeah, so one of the rules is it's called the 1% rule. So the 1% rule is you take the revenue that's coming into the property and you say, let's say I have $1,000 a month in rent. I don't want to spend more than $100,000 on that property because it's a 1% rule. But depending on what else you can do with the property, you know that if you have 1% of the value, you're going to cash flow. You're going to cash flow all day long. But one of the things you want to do is go back and look at those numbers, make sure that there's ways that you can either decrease your expenses and increase your revenue so that you still cash flow. Because I tend to think that if you're at 0.6% to 1%, it's worth looking at. And it's worth taking a deeper dive. But if it's less than 0.6, I stay away from it. Because I know I'm not going to cash flow it. There's too much margin. There's too many expenses tied to that property. So I like to play within that rule. A lot of people stick hard and true to the 1% rule. I go a little bit lower and see where else can I decrease my expenses, and that'll bring me up to the 1% rule.
Those are very good indicators, right? In terms of helping our investors how to find the right properties.
Right.
And Warren Buffett once mentioned that it's rather to buy a wonderful firm with fair price rather than buy a fair firm with wonderful price, right?
Exactly. That's a really good point, right? Because if you have a fair firm, really good price, that's an underperforming. It's always, it may always be underperforming. It's better to find something that brings in decent revenue. If it's bringing in good revenue or has the potential to bring in good revenue. Right. Because sometimes it's not just about the revenue. Sometimes it's about the mortgage structure. Like sometimes people's property don't cash flow because they just don't have a good mortgage product on it. And if you change your mortgage product, for example, like now, the interest rates are super high right now. So if you change your mortgage structure and you're able to get better financing, for example, if you have 5 units or more and you go into a CMHC mortgage and you do a little bit of affordable housing or accessible housing, you get these great amortizations that are 40 to 50 years long.
Right.
So when you have this great mortgage on it, your cash flow goes up because you're not getting all of that principal pay down in the very beginning. It's spread out longer, which means you're going to cash flow even more.
It helps you to be more sustainable. Right?
Exactly.
And actually, you brought a very good point. That's exactly what we were trying to talk about, the following question there. Recently, with pretty high interest rate environment, in terms of finding and selecting a right property there, any common suggestions there on that?
Yeah, so I think part of what you have to do is figure out what you qualify for first. You have to know what's in your wallet. A lot of people make the mistake of they go pick the property but don't know what they can afford. So figure out your financing first. Talk to a mortgage broker, a qualified mortgage broker that knows your portfolio, knows your current situation. They'll tell you what you can afford. The property comes second, and a lot of people don't realize that. They think it's the property first, and it's the property that qualifies.
Probably most of people think that way.
And although that's a little bit true, the property is very important in it. You're more important. It's what is your credibility? What is your credit rating? That's going to determine your interest rate. And a lot of people don't know that. So you have to know what you qualify for before you go shopping. And that's going to help you pick the right property.
Those are very good comments there. In your previous speech, you talked about flipping, right? Regarding of those flipping there, in your mind, what's the definition for that flipping? Because that could be confusing to some of the investors.
Yeah, I have two definitions for flipping.
Okay.
One of them is you buy the property, you renovate, and then you resell. Right? So you put it on the market and you resell it, and that's flipping. That's traditionally the term for flipping. Now is not the time to be flipping. Now in this economy is not the time to be flipping. Unless you can buy that property half price, it's not the time to be flipping. You're going to lose your shirt. You'll run into trouble because the market is declining slightly. You've also got interest rates incredibly high, so people are trying to beat you down on your price because of the interest rates. So now's not the time to be flipping. What it is a good time to do is maybe to flip to yourself. And what that means is you renovate. This is where the mortgage broker comes in handy, and then why they're very important is you know what you can qualify for in the future. So you pick this property, you renovate it, you increase the value of it, never increase it more than you can qualify to refinance. So you have to be very careful how much money you put into it. There's no point in taking a $400,000 house and making it worth $1 million if you only qualify for $600,000. This is why the mortgage broker plays an important part in it. And if you don't over renovate and you're able to refinance that property and flip it back to yourself in a new mortgage, you now have all of that lift in the equity. You're able to keep it in your portfolio, and then you can leverage it in the future. So all that equity that you built into it, you don't want to leave that money on the table, right? So like imagine I went from 400,000 to 800 or 900 but I only qualify for 6. Well, I'm going to have to work super hard and get up to that qualification in the future to access that equity. So you always have to stay within your buying power unless you're going to sell it in the future, right? Because that's the only way you can pull out 100% of your equity. So I think it's really important that you need to determine at the beginning if you're going to flip or flip to yourself. And don't be afraid to change course. If you were going to flip it, and now you find out, well, the market's slipping a little bit, don't lose money. Get it tenanted, keep it, hold, stay the course, stay with it for a while, sell it later.
Those are excellent explanation there. And actually, we do have some investors reported that when after they did flipping, they did not make any profit. Instead, they lost. Over this kind of a pretty painful process there.
Exactly. I have a project right now that we were going to flip. Okay, so it's an 8-plex. We were renovating it, and we ended up with a lot of delays with the city we were working in. We ended up with a lot of delays with permits, and so what happened is by the time we actually got the permit and the funding to do the renovation, we can finish the entire renovation, sell it, spend 2 years working on it, and not make a penny. So that's not a good place to be. So what we decided was we're not going to sell it. We're going to now rent it. We're working with CMHC.
Hold it.
We're going to hold it. We're going to make 2 of the units affordable, get that better financing, go up to a 50-year mortgage. Now our cash flow goes up and we'll just keep it. We didn't make any money. We're break even right now.
Right.
But we didn't make any money. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to hold it, wait. We'll wait because at least we have enough money coming in to cover everything. The market's growing. We always get passive appreciation. You get that, you get your cash flow covers your bills and you have your principal pay down. So in essence, when you've refinanced, you may not have made any money, but you got a building for free.
Right.
Because you're going to pull that out later. So that's what our strategy was. It didn't make sense to flip it because you don't work for 2 years on a project to just throw it away and give it to somebody else.
And as per what you said there, that actually one of the pretty critical elements and also one of the prerequisites that you need to know what's the limit that you can afford, that you can have, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
In order to have those before you actually proceed with any.
Yeah. This is why your team's really important to you. Like your mortgage broker is a very important person on your team. You need to be, because they have their pulse on the economy and what's going on with mortgages and interest rates. So they're a very important person on our team. We work with our mortgage broker on a regular basis and we'll look at our projects. We'll get them reappraised mid-project so that we're in tune with the economy and what's going on in the market. Because what it was appraised at the beginning of the project 2 years ago is not what it's appraised at now. In some cases it's better, in some cases it's worse, right? So you need to know your appraiser and your mortgage broker are very important on your team.
It sounds perfect. Actually, the other term that actually in coordinating with this one is renovation. And in your mind, how would you differentiate this flipping versus renovation? Because from time to time, quite many of the investors, they're doing their renovation, but they're not sure that's also fall into part of a flipping as well.
Right. So renovations is really just value add. So what you're doing is you're renovating a property to add value. So my son's doing one right now. It's a really cool little project. It's only $60,000 to purchase. It's in Saskatchewan. I mean, it's not in Ontario, but he's got this small little project in Saskatchewan. He paid $60,000 for it and he's renovating it. So what he's doing is he's removing, and this is what I call a level 1 renovation. It's very minor. You go in, you paint everything. You clean it up. You change the flooring. If you change the flooring and the hardware and the paint, you can increase the value. You've added value for a very low price. You don't have to gut an entire building and start over. There are different levels of renovation. One of them is cosmetic. There's a cosmetic renovation where you update it and you make it to today's current value or today's current image, let's say that. So you put nice trims on it, you fix the floors, you paint it, maybe you change the doors, you change a little hardware, perhaps you paint the kitchen without renovating the kitchen, but you modernize it, right? So that's the first level of renovation. The next level where you're going to add a lot of value is when you actually change out your bathrooms. You update the bathrooms, increases the value in your home. If you change your kitchen completely, it upgrades the value of your home. That's a big value add, but you can start with paint, floors, fixtures. Light fixtures is a big thing as well. That increases the perceived value of this home. And then you go with bathrooms, kitchens. The biggest value add you can do to any home in a renovation is adding an income suite. When you add an income suite in it, it increases the value of that home significantly because now you have a mortgage helper. You have somebody that's living in the basement or as an addition on the home or even an ADU, an auxiliary dwelling unit in the backyard. In Ontario, you're permitted to have 3 units in your home without going and getting rezoning. This is a new law as of last year. So I can put in a basement suite even if it's not zoned for it, which is incredible, right? Because The basement suite is the one renovation you can do that adds the most value to your home because now you have somebody paying your mortgage. And if you go to sell it in the future, it's now worth way more money because you added that. So those are all renovation examples.
Right.
Flipping is when you go in and you do all of those things and then you just sell it.
So I really hope that our audience can hear that what Judi just mentioned. Those could be very influential and also could be very helpful to our further decision there, right? So we are currently talking about the refinance, right? Especially currently with pretty high interest rate there, more and more investors are talking about, or even sometimes debating, the cash flow. And there are actually two type of investors in our group here. One type of investors that they purely based on the positive cash flow in the past. I mean, it did pretty well actually before the COVID-19.
Sure.
And before the interest rate was gone up for 10 times since last year. And the other type of investors is just to keep the negative cash flow, however that they have other resource of income just to afford for keep sustainable their operation there. And currently, due to this pretty high interest rate there, they have been pretty difficult in their solution there. They even talk about try to analyze that with the gross cash flow, net cash flow. Now even after that's the level 1, level 2, now even level 3 that they're triggered. So those causing a lot of headache issues on that.
Yeah, so in my opinion, when you're looking at your mortgages, it's really important to look at your whole portfolio, not just one in isolation. You have to look at the whole portfolio. Some of your properties may break even, some may cash flow, some may not. But when you're looking at the whole, how are you doing? And that's why your mortgage broker is important, because you want to look at the whole big picture. When you're looking at refinancing, I'm a big believer that if you're going to refinance, what are you doing with that money? Like ask yourself, if you're refinancing and you're pulling money out of it, because there's a difference. There's mortgage renewal and there's mortgage refinance. When you're refinancing, you're pulling money out, you're pulling equity out. So you need to say to yourself, what are you doing with that money? And is that generating you more cash flow or equal cash flow? So for example, if I have a house and I owe, I don't know, 200,000 on it, but it's worth 500,000. If I go and I refinance up to 400, because that's 80% loan to value, that just gave me $200,000. We can't expect our tenant to make that cash flow for us. That 200,000 that you took out, it's your responsibility to go make money with that. So you have that money, it's come out, you now go make money with that. You can either private lend it, so it's costing you, it's costing you 6% right now to take that money out, you can private lend it. Or you can do what I think is really clever, is you add a line of credit to it. And you use it when you need to. This allows you access to that equity, but you don't get charged for it unless you use it. So if you find another really great deal, another really great property, you can now go buy that property because you have the line of credit set up. You now have instant cash available to you so that you can go and buy something else, or you can lend on a project, or you can do something else and make money in between. So if I'm paying 6% on this newfound money, I need to find a deal that's paying me 12, right? So I'm still making 6%. This is the best way for you to cash flow, is to do something else with that project, but don't put it on your tenant. It's your responsibility to make money with that money that you've newly found.
That's very true.
Right? So a lot of people say, oh, I won't cash flow if I increase your mortgage. Well, you will if you use that money properly. Right? Like don't go buy a boat. You know, don't go buy a car. Use that money to invest. And that investment dollar is going to go a long way, because you're going to make more money than 6% than what it's costing you. So I think that's really important that people understand that. And so that was the refinance piece of it. Renewing your mortgage, let's ladder them. Let's not take all of our mortgages and try to do them all at once, right? And if you have to, because a lot of people are like, they're in high income, they get all these mortgages and then, oh shoot, they're all coming due in the same year. Well, that's bad. That's not a good place to be, right? So what I would do is I would take one property and I'll put it in a 1-year mortgage. The other one I'll put in a 2-year mortgage. Then I'll put it in a 3-year mortgage. Because what that does is it mitigates my risk. Right? So now I'm not having 100% of my properties being impacted by this inflated interest rate. If you ladder your mortgages, you're gonna only be impacted, like say you had 5 properties or you do 5-year mortgages, only 20% of your portfolio will ever be impacted if you ladder them. Yeah, you're mitigating that risk, and that's a really good thing, right? If you can mitigate that.
Actually potentially mitigating the risk there, right?
Exactly, because you're diversifying your portfolio with your properties by having them in different interest rate structures. So, now if I have to renew, I just renewed a mortgage actually, and it was painful because it's super expensive, right? So I just renewed this mortgage. It was super expensive. I took a 1-year term. The other one that I renewed, I took a 2-year term. So now I'm splitting my risk.
And some of the investors currently, since they're in a very tough situation, they're triggered and they even cannot afford keep paying those mortgages. So they're trying to do take different strategies. One way certainly is to try to expand your amortization period. As you said, that as long as possible. Try to keep your cash flow. But some other investors, they really have to find some other extra mortgages in order to pay the existing mortgages. So those are pretty challenging.
That's a tough one because you have to figure out how much you have left, how much runway and time you have left. So if you put a second mortgage on it, it's a little bit more expensive. But what if that carries your whole portfolio? What if you could put a second mortgage on one thing and you used that to get you through this hard time, right? And you used it just to sort of pay your bills if you qualify for it. It's a difficult time. It really is for mortgages. I have friends that have rental properties that they rent, so they need to move because their landlord can't afford the new mortgage rate. And the reason they need to move is because the landlord now wants to sell, which is this person is clearly uneducated. They think that, the rates have gone up so much, I need to sell this and kick my tenant out. If they only knew and worked with a mortgage broker and said, like, what else can I do? Like you said, extend that amortization to keep the cash flow even. You're better off to do that. You're better off to extend that amortization and ride out this wave because it will change. It always changes. The market always comes up and then it comes down. And we just need to be patient. And we need to know how much time we have left before we run out of money, right? Because you don't want to be making decisions under duress or in a crisis. So it's really important to be planning.
Some are investors that they really have to even borrow those money from B lenders, right? What's your opinion of those B lenders? Because this could be very debatable.
I love B lenders.
Really?
I love them because, for example, the house we're sitting in right now was mortgage free a while ago, and I was wanting to buy 2 other properties, and the interest rates are quite high right now. I don't want to get locked in to a 6.5-7% mortgage on $1.5 million that I was trying to pull out. So I went to a B lender and they gave me a no income verification. I didn't have to prove my income. I just had to do an appraisal on the home. Do the appraisal on the home. They gave me this amazing mortgage, which to me it's amazing. It cost me 8.5%. Plus a 2% lender fee, plus a broker fee. Everybody's saying, holy smokes, that's 13% or 12% or whatever it is. And yes, it is. But it gave me $1.6 million and I went out and bought 2 more properties. So for me, I love B lenders. I think it's an amazing strategy to use a B lender to access some of that equity that you have so that you can continue what you're doing. So, because in the end, when you get the good financing, your cash flow goes up, right? So long as you can weather the storm with a B lender. My first property I bought was with a B lender, and it was, this was 2014, and I was paying 3.99% when everybody was paying 2%. And my friends were appalled. They were like, 3.99, that's crazy. And I thought, 3.99, that's amazing. I was so excited because I was buying a place and it broke even.
It's kind of a different opinion, right?
Yeah, it's a different mindset. I think you have to have the mindset of abundance and not scarcity, and realize what it's doing for you. What is that B lender doing for you? Is it getting you closer to your goal? I only cash flowed $1 on that property, but 3 years later, I sold it and made $175,000.
Wow.
So when you think about it that way, it wasn't about cash flow. It was about what's the market doing? What's the principal pay down? If you're breaking even, you're still winning. There's 4 ways to win in real estate. You get it in passive appreciation, whatever the market is doing. You get it by that value add, so your active appreciation. So if we're adding value, we're increasing the value of that property. You get it by your principal pay down.
Right.
Cash flow is only 1/4 of the things that you can make money in real estate. If you can break even and you can weather the storm, all those other elements are making you money. So this property with a B lender made me $1 a month. $1 was my cash flow. I basically, that's breaking even. If I had to change a light bulb, I would lose money, right? So, but it was the principal recapture. It was the market and the value add that I put into it that made me $175,000 in 3 years.
So you actually brought up some excellent points. Number one, that you need to be fully clear that what your goal is, right?
100%.
Yeah, and you need to be very clear that what my goal is, what I'm going to do. And second, that as you mentioned, that whether those B lenders can support me, can help me, help me to reach that goal there, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you know what's important about the goal is don't be too stuck on the goal. So reevaluate. So I have a saying. It's an IT saying, but it's plan, do, check, act.
Right.
So you plan something with that goal, you do it, then you check it.
Yeah.
And you say, am I still okay? If you're not okay, now you need to act on it and then put a new plan into place. So I'm a big believer in always having that continuous cycle of improvement in your portfolio. And because you had the goal, so long as you're winning, it doesn't matter if your goal changes a little bit.
Right.
Because the economy has changed. We have to adjust and pivot. And I think it's important that when you're making those adjustments, you're still aligned to what your future goal is. Right? So goals are really important.
Exactly. And actually, another third point that, as you brought up there, that you need to have a thorough research or clear understanding of the market of the real estate investment there, right?
Yes.
And you know where you can put your money, what the right property you can put it in. And that's, as you have extensive background there, that's what we're going to cover later on as well. But those could actually helpful before you make your decision there, right?
That's right. Your team and your goals are really important. I do something that's called an impact filter. So it's just a tool that I use, and I say, this is what I want to do, and I when I'm looking at a property, what does that do to my goal? What does it do to my portfolio? And if it's not adding value and getting me closer to my lifestyle goal, then I won't do it. It has to get me closer. If it doesn't get me closer, I won't do it.
Right. The other topic that you brought up in your previous speech as well, let's talk about the over-leveraging, right? As you said, that when we're talking about the cash flow, we're talking about the refinancing even, that sometimes over-leveraging could be a black hole, we put it this way. Right?
Yeah.
How would you analyze that?
Yeah, so I think, this is what happens when real estate investors are new and get excited. And they don't look at their whole portfolio, and they don't, they run out of, I call it running out of runway. for takeoff, right? So I've got this project leveraged, I've got this property leveraged, and I borrow private money against it, and then I go borrow more money, and I go borrow more money. There has to be an exit strategy. If you need to have at least 2 or 3 different exit strategies for any money you borrow. How will I pay this money back? Right? And I think sometimes people over leverage to get into the next deal or to get into the next deal over here, and they get distracted by the fact that at some point in time you have to pay people back. You have to pay those lenders back. So when you over leverage, it's tricky because especially in a down economy like this, how do you pay these people back? Right? This is why people have fire sales. This is why they're selling their portfolio or this property or that property, because they're really just trying to buy time. They're trying to buy time, get a little bit of money so that they can keep paying over here. It's really important to not go more than 80% loan to value across your portfolio.
Oh, that's a very good indicator.
Right? Yeah. 80% loan to value across your portfolio is a good place to be. I understand sometimes you have equity in a property and you borrow a little bit more. Maybe you're at 90%, so you can do something else. But overall,
over portfolio, right?
Yeah. Overall, I think it's prudent to be at 80% loan to value or less. My personal goal is 65%. Like I want to have that much equity in my properties because it gets me into better banking privileges.
Right.
So when I have more equity, the bank likes me more. The A lenders like me more. So 80% I think is a good, safe place to be. Sometimes 85 or 90, depending on what the product is, like multifamily. If you're going to get into multifamily and you're going to do CMHC financing, they take you anywhere from 80 to 95% loan to value. That's fine if you're generating cash flow. Right? Because you have to be able to have that cash flow for when rates change so it doesn't get gobbled up, right?
But your 65% actually puts you a much safer zone there.
Yeah, so that's my long-term goal. Right now, my portfolio is sitting in its 70s at about 72% loan to value. But my long-term goal is to get it down to 65% loan to value, because for me that means I can weather the storm. It also means I get better banking privileges. So, and that's where you get good rates. With the A lenders. Right.
From one of the real estate investors, his name is Louis Glickman, and he mentioned a very, very interesting phrase there. He said, "The best investment on earth is earth." And that's actually very, very interesting quoting. And the other one from the John Stuart Mill, and he said, "Landlords grow rich in their sleeping without working."
That's right.
Those are some very good analyze, or even some their comments regarding real estate investment there. What about the credit union? Is that something that we can also potentially?
Yeah, I love credit unions. Credit unions are B lenders and their rules are different. So what's great about them is they don't have the same guidelines. They don't have to follow the same guidelines. Of course, they have the same risk sort of guidelines, but they don't have to follow the A lender guidelines and the Bank of Canada guidelines as far as what your loan to value is, what your debt service ratio is. You often get more money from a credit union, particularly in markets that are small markets, like tertiary markets, secondary markets. You want to go to the credit union because they're in small communities typically, and what they do is they help those communities thrive because they're kind of the heart of it, right? Like I was mentioning my son who has this property in Saskatchewan, he's working with a credit union. It's a small town. The population is 1,200 people, very small town. You're not going to an A lender in that town to get your money. You're going to the credit union because they're going to A, give you a decent rate, it's going to be competitive, and B, they're going to let your debt service be a little bit higher. So that's important, especially right now with interest rates, because your debt service is calculated on your expenses. Interest rates go up, so does your debt service. So does your debt service ratio. And they're a little bit more lenient, so you get more latitude, you get more runway when you're working with a credit union. So I think they're amazing, especially local credit unions in small towns and or credit unions that are cultural credit unions. So, you may have a credit union that works specifically with a demographic. Those are great as well. Because now our immigrant population can go to those smaller credit unions and they're more supportive of their financial growth.
Right. So they have their own relatively different guideline or whatever policies there, right? That could potentially beneficial.
100%.
Right. Yeah.
专业名家汇集，市场大势解析，投资痛点事宜，时下热点直击。欢迎收看房东网名家讲坛。